Welcome, and thank you for tuning in. In this video, we will be showing how the recent resignations of the BBC's Director General Tim Davie and the CEO of News Deborah Turness has exposed BBC's shocking two-tier policy. We will highlight their double standards by contrasting how they have treated Donald Trump to how they are treating Lewis Hamilton, to show that the two-tier policy has been institutionalized for some time now. In both instances, they have used poor editorial standards as cover for selling fake news on events centered around the two global icons. In the case of Donald Trump, a week before the US presidential election in October 2024, BBC Panorama aired a program titled, "Trump, A Second Chance?" The program was intentionally edited to falsely suggest that in the speech he delivered on January 6, 2021, he had directly urged supporters to walk down to the Capitol and fight like hell, even though this was not true. To create this false narrative, the BBC spliced together parts of his speech that were more than 50 minutes apart. In Trump's speech in Washington, D.C. on the 6th of January, 2021, he said, "We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women." However, in the Panorama edit he was shown saying, "We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you. And we fight. We fight like hell." The fraud came to light when a BBC internal memo noting that the two parts had been spliced together was leaked to The Telegraph. The two resignations followed subsequently, and the BBC chairman is scheduled to apologise to Parliament this Wednesday. It has been reported that the offending content has since been taken down by the BBC. So, less than a week after the hatchet piece was exposed, the resignation of the Director General and the CEO of News were announced, but we are not exactly sure when they come into effect. Now, the BBC's organisational structure is somewhat murky and difficult to navigate, but we are not aware that any of the people who produced that misleading content have been fired or received any sanctions. There is no suggestion or expectation that Tim or Deborah worked directly on the programme, so why have those who did not faced any sanctions? As far as we can tell using ChatGPT, the edition of Panorama at the centre of the controversy was edited by Karen Whiteman. The fact that she, or any others involved in the production have not faced any sanctions is clear evidence that peddling fake news is deeply institutionalized in the BBC. The two high-profile resignations are mere tokens designed to portray them as martyrs sacrificing themselves to shield their subordinates from accountability. If selling fake news had not been institutionalized, they would have simply fired those who had produced the content, but then they would have problems because there are in all likelihood overwhelming receipts showing that they were doing what was expected of them. This is why last Sunday's BBC News programme, which aired after the announcement of the resignation, was very defensive, as they attempted to minimize, gaslight, deflect and play victim. They suggested that they were being victimized by competitors, detractors, critics, the postman, the milkman and the candlestick maker. Without any sense of self-awareness or irony, the BBC presenter argued that when the doctoring was highlighted, some had wanted to put out a revised edition making clear that the two sections had been spliced together, but were told to hold fire, and this invariably landed them where they are now. It was totally lost on her that she was inadvertently admitting that there had been a failure of editorial diligence, which should have resulted in a sacking or some such sanction. To make matters worse, she does not appear to recognize that the fact that they had the opportunity to, and chose not to issue the revision, is clear evidence of the culture that there are other considerations above and beyond the integrity of the content they put out. This is like the police force that has been engaging in the fabrication of evidence to secure convictions, then making excuses when a high-profile conviction is overturned, and the police chief resigns but the officers who fabricated the evidence remain in the force. But the BBC are now so deeply immersed in the cult of fake news that they believe that there are circumstances where it is okay to spread fake news. We turn now to the matter of the fake news that they were spreading in the immediate aftermath of Abu Dhabi 2021, to show not only that this is something that they have been doing for years, but also to contrast their handling of Hamilton to that of Trump. But before going further, if you are enjoying this video, we invite those of you who haven't yet done so, to like, comment, share, subscribe, and click the notification icon, to be notified when the next one is uploaded. Thank you. We'd also like to take this opportunity to urge those of you who haven't yet done so, to sign our online petition for an inquiry into the BBC and Channel 4's coverage of Lewis Hamilton and Abu Dhabi, which we have amended to include Gary Lineker's sacking by the BBC. A link has been provided in the description. If you are on X, then please repost our tweet. Thank you. Within hours of the completion of the nighttime race in Abu Dhabi on December 12, 2021, the BBC put out several content, including a piece on BBC News, which falls under Deborah's jurisdiction, falsely representing the race steward Michael Marcy, was entitled to rig the race. This was simply not true. At that time, the Liberty Media-controlled F1 lamestream media was falsely suggesting that the race steward had the authority to rig the race. BBC, as a publicly funded purveyor of truth, should have made it clear that Marcy was wrong. But instead, on a prominent flagship program such as Ros Atkins' Explainer series, they produced a video titled, Ros Atkins on the Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen F1 title drama, which fueled the controversy by representing that it was unclear whether Marcy had the authority to rig the race. To buttress the false narrative that the race steward was entitled to rig the race, they got David Coulthard, a well-known Lewis Hamilton hater and Max Verstappen promoter, to falsely represent that there was a rule which entitled Marcy to make a decision he feels is correct, as shown in the illustration. David's false narrative was teed up by Ros, who claimed that it was not necessarily true that the race director was wrong, when it should have been clear that he was. That false narrative was then rounded up by the BBC's chief F1 correspondent, who disingenuously claimed that the sporting regulations do not cover this specific situation. The sporting regulations covered that specific situation. It was Marcy that acted outside the regulations. Simple. Benson's lying quote was clearly designed to fuel the false narrative that the BBC, as a publicly funded establisher of the truth, should have unequivocally dispelled. The segment, which is provided for your attention, is just one section of the explainer video, which was clearly designed to mislead the public on the matter of whether Marcy was entitled to rig.
David Coulthard offered this explanation.
And the sporting regulations are hugely complex as well. And the sequence of events of only allowing 5 cars to overtake Lewis before the safety car came in is not something that typically has happened before.
So if David Coulthard says that, does that mean the race director was wrong? Not necessarily.
The FIA do have another rule which allows the race director to override that and make the decision he feels is correct.
Which leads us to BBC Sports F1 correspondent Andrew Benson's conclusion that the sporting regulations do not cover this specific situation.
Notably, the video was produced within hours of the incident and proves that it was coordinated for the purpose of fueling the controversy and gaslighting the robbery. This is another clear example of the poor editorial standard that allowed the fake Trump narrative to be broadcast, and in this instance David was allowed to cite an unnamed rule which the BBC did not bother to verify. Critically, even after it was later confirmed that Marcy was wrong and no such rule existed, the video is still available on the BBC platform with no qualification or revision. This contrasts sharply with what occurred in President Trump's case, where the offending material was taken off the BBC platform. The fact that the video was produced and is still available on the BBC platform even after the false claims have been debunked is testament to the fake news culture that pervades the BBC corridors. Just like it was in Trump's case, those who produced the Hamilton hatchet piece have not suffered any sanctions. As far as we have been able to establish using ChatGPT, Tom Brada, who produced Ros Atkins' misleading program, has not suffered any sanctions, and as we have shown in several videos, Benson continues to undermine Sir Lewis's legacy at every given opportunity. So, Any suggestion that the Trump program was an aberration or a one-off is simply not true. The real question is why the difference between the way the BBC have reacted to Trump and Hamilton. In the case of Trump, they spliced two segments of his speech together to make it appear that he had said something that he didn't actually say, which was wrong. Then when they were exposed, their top bosses retired after apologizing and the offending material was taken down, all within a week. In the case of Hamilton, they got their main presenter to suggest that the race steward was acting within rules by allowing a rogue agent to cite an unnamed and non-existent rule, and then used their own chief F1 reporter to support that false narrative. Then when the lie about the unnamed and non-existent rule was exposed, nobody resigned or suffered any sanctions, they didn't apologize, and 4 years down the line, the offending material is still available on their platform. We have done several videos highlighting the fraud. James of Fixed and others have done videos as well. Their comment sections are filled with many decrying the lie, and we are aware that James has engaged directly with Benson on the matter. As license fee payers who are paying for the BBC to be impartial and tell the truth, we deserve to be heard when we raise legitimate concerns about wrongdoing at the BBC. Ros Atkins lied when he represented that it was not necessarily so that Marcy was wrong. David Coulthard lied when he said there was a rule which allowed Marcy to do as he feels. Andrew Benson lied when he said the regulations did not cover that specific situation. There is now an opportunity to demand that the BBC take this matter as seriously as they did the lie they told about Trump. We cannot accept a two-tier policy where an elite group with high-level access are given preferential treatment. Consequently, we urge you to share this video as widely as possible, and sign our petition if you have not already done so. We also urge you to write to the members of the Parliamentary Select Committee that will be taking oral evidence from Michael Prescott on the Trump matter tomorrow, and let them know that the BBC need to be held accountable for the Ros Atkins explainer video as well. Thank you.